Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. My name is Kaylee.
And my name is Desi.
Be sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to turn on post notifications. Before we get into this case, we always encourage those who have useful information to any unsolved case, please report it to your local police and sheriff department.
Today we will be doing things a little differently. Grab your life jacket and get ready to ride the waves of a great mystery. The great mystery being the Flannan Isles and the 3 missing lighthouse keepers. In case you don't know what the Flannan Isles are, they are rocky islands off the western coast of Scotland. The isles had a weird effect on both sheep and shepherds. The sheep sent to the island were said to have given birth to either twins or recover from illnesses.
So let's begin our journey. So in 1896, the Board of Trade began construction of the lighthouse, and they put the lighthouse on one of the biggest isles of the island. Her name was called Eilean Mor. Eilean Mor had bothies, which is a Scottish term for a small hut that sits in a run. They also constructed the chapel of St. Flannan. December 1899, the lighthouse was officially completed and lit for the very first time. There were 4 lighthouse keepers assigned to this lighthouse.
Each lighthouse keeper worked staggering shifts, so they worked 6 weeks on and 2 weeks off, but there was always 3 men at the lighthouse. Due to this made it more functional for them. But in mid-December of 1900, 1 year later, roughly 3 men at the time, James Ducat, a 43-year-old principal keeper with a wife who had 4 kids and 20 years of experience, Donald MacArthur, 40 years old, married, occasionally would tend to the lighthouse, which at this time Donald was actually covering for an assistant keeper on sick leave, so he wasn't even technically supposed to be there. And Thomas Marshall, the youngest, 28 years old, who was assistant keeper, something bad happened to them.
Joseph Moore, he was a 4th keeper, however he was not on duty. This was his time to have his 2 weeks off. So midnight, December 15, 1900, a steamship called Archtor passed the lighthouse. Captain Holman of the ship did not see that the lighthouse was lit. The conditions outside were not bad. It was not stormy, there wasn't lightning, there was plenty of visibility, so he should have been able to see the lighthouse. Archtor reported the lighthouse not being lit. After it had reached the port, it communicated this with the Northern Lighthouse Board. However, for some reason along these lines, communication apparently had failed, and so the Northern Lighthouse Board never received this message, even though they were supposed to.
So on December 26th of 1900, the lighthouse tender ship Hesperus did a routine check to Eilean Mor, but as they were going towards the island, Captain James Harvey said there was no flag on the flagpole, and it was very strange, of course. So Hesperus sounded her horn, hoping to get attention from the lighthouse, and there was no response. So they fired a flare, no response again. And Joseph Moore, the one who was not on duty at the time, was on board of the Hesperus at this time.
So whenever Joseph Moore did not see a signal back, he decided to hop out of the Hesperus and go ahead on shore to make sure everything was okay. When he got there, everything looked fine. Nothing was different. It all looked the same. Moore said that the entrance gate, entrance door, and the door beyond the entrance door was closed. However, what was really weird is that the kitchen door was wide open. And the fireplace was not lit either. And what's even stranger is all the clock had stopped. With all that being said, why do you think the kitchen door was wide open? All the other doors were clearly closed.
I, to be honest, have no clue why it was wide open. Maybe they went into the kitchen to get some food or a snack or something and forgot to close the door, or somebody maybe made their entry towards the kitchen and they just forgot to close the door behind them.
Good.
Or the wind blew it open.
Yeah.
That too.
This was in a windy area.
Especially if they left the windows open. Could have blew somebody's bra off. But when Moore saw this, he said, "I then entered the rooms in succession, found the beds empty, just as they left them early in the morning." Really, if you think about that, that's kind of really strange because usually that doesn't happen, of course. Mor began to realize that something was wrong, and he headed back to the Hesperus. He gathered more men and thought that maybe they could help investigate the situation a little further.
So when they were investigating the situation, the men had found this. They found that the lamp for the lighthouse still worked. They had absolutely no idea what happened to the men, and this is why it was not settling right with them, because everything seemed to all be intact. Mor and the 3 others decide to stay at the lighthouse, and then the other people aboard the Hesperus set sail to telegraph the incident back to the Northern Lighthouse Board. You have to really think about this. They did not have the same technology that we have today. Today we can just pick up a phone, like dial 911 and report directly what happened. Back in the day, they didn't even have a radio. This is how they would report incidents. So the next day, the men searched the island for clues.
East Boat Landing is where Mor had arrived, and it was completely in perfect order. But on Westboard Landing, it was complete opposite. It was damaged, and the box with tackle and mooring ropes were gone. The ropes were scattered on the rocks, the iron railings were broken, even some were missing. And Mor found all of this detailed in the keeper's log. So this meant that this happened before the disappearance, or that it wasn't correlated with what happened. But how did the ropes end up scattered on the rocks, and where did the tackle box go?
So I think it is possible that the tackle box could have gone into the ocean. I mean, you know, the ocean with the motion. Having like big waves and whatnot, you know, we don't really know the exact condition of the ocean at that time. So it could have been a very stormy night and could have easily taken the tackle box away and swept it into sea. And that's also would explain why the ropes were kind of just scattered everywhere. Someone could have done this themselves. It could have been one of the men who were the lighthouse keepers at the time.
Do you think that this was purely coincidental and that this just happened either ironic timing or before, or do you think that this could have been something that was planned?
I think that likely they probably did not like intend to specifically take this stuff off of that. However, I do think likely what happened is that, like I said, some sort of storm and big waves came by, took this stuff away. More likely it possibly happened before their disappearance, because again, it was put in the logbook. So even stranger things did happen there. So first of all, the life-saving device, the buoy, it was gone. And this buoy was 110 feet above sea level, and it was kept with the railings. However, the way the buoy, after it was gone, the ropes were still intact, so it wasn't like a man could have removed it. So it kind of indicates, like I said, that there was rough seas at this time. However, for it to remove this buoy that's 110 feet above sea level, there would need to be some kind of massive storm or tsunami in order to do that. Now, historian Mike Dash did find evidence from a lighthouse keeper in 1950. So what he found is a photograph of a 300-foot wave that splashed the Eilean Mor lighthouse. And I do want to put a note in there that the biggest tsunami that has ever been recorded is 1,720 feet high, so really massive. So even though there was a 300-foot wave, there have been waves bigger than that, which is absolutely insane and terrifying.
Big wave, kill people, wahaha. But yo, this statement, this would have made the lighthouse wet. Wow. This would have made the lighthouse wet, of course, but the person who took the photo could have easily been swept away by the wave. Mike also took note of the clothes that were left behind, and Mor also knew what his coworkers were wearing at the time that they vanished. Now, MacArthur, the coat that he wore had been left behind, which meant MacArthur vanished without a coat in the middle of fucking December, where it's cold as shit, especially in the UK and near Scotland. So he could have easily gotten hypothermia easily, but there were logs found from the final days before this happened. So why do you think MacArthur left his coat behind?
The most plausible reason would be that MacArthur was with a tackle box if it was out to sea and he saw it was gone and he wanted to go and get it. Well, maybe he didn't have his coat on at that time and thought, I'm going to be able to swim. I'm a strong swimmer. These seas can't sweep me away. And so he went in the ocean without a coat.
Okay, sounds pretty legit.
So December 13th, 1900, this was the last official log that can be confirmed. However, there was a slate that had details from December 14th and the 15th, which cannot be confirmed or denied, but the stuff in this log could be true. So it included times that the light from the lighthouse was off. It also included atmospheric readings, 9 a.m. the 15th. The log noted strong storms and gusty winds. However, no one else nearby, like in any island or in the UK, reported turbulent weather. So this kind of makes people theorize that these storms were either very local or these men were crazy and they hallucinated the entire thing. With that being said, do you think a massive storm in the ocean could be localized in that area and happen during that time? Or was this just all hallucinated? No one else nearby reported such weather.
I mean, it's possible because if you think about it, like with storms and many events, it usually is very localized to one area. Sometimes, like, you know, it can be even more localized to one specific spot in a place, in a town, or even in the middle of the ocean. So it's very possible that this could have happened during this time and nobody else could have seen it because, of course, it was just localized in that one spot. So they wouldn't have seen it. They wouldn't have experienced it. But it's also very possible it was hallucinated as well. They did work, 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and I'm sure they were awake a lot of time.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of sleep.
No, so they were obviously going through it all. But one of the men, there was a report that discovered additional logs, which were by Thomas Marshall. And his logs talked about how scary the storms were and that the men prayed. The men were on 150 feet up in the air and they were still scared. Marshall says Duquette was very quiet in the recent days and MacArthur was sobbing. And in his final entry in the logs, it had read, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is overall." And that was it.
But like I said, the logs may not be true because I can't fully confirm those logs. Also, even if the logs were true, there's still a lot of missing details in this. It doesn't completely explain their disappearances. Investigators did go to another man after searching the island. His name was Roderick Mackenzie. He was a gamekeeper, and he was supposed to basically watch and make sure he could see everything at their lighthouse. He, at this time, he does mention a strong point, obviously they didn't have radio then, so he could never have radio contact with the lighthouse. So if they needed help, they were stranded. They could not get help. However, back then, whenever they needed to get help, lighthouse keepers would use poles with balls to get attention if they needed help.
And these would be placed outside balconies. Unfortunately, all they could do is help. 18 miles southeast on Eilean Island. This is where Mackenzie was paid £8 to watch for communications from the Flannan Isles, to look at the lighthouse every night and take note to see if he could see the light or any signals during the day. Now, Mackenzie reported to investigators that he could not see the lighthouse tower between December 7th through December 29th, which is a good couple of weeks. Why didn't Mackenzie report sooner to the Northern Lighthouse Board that he couldn't see the lighthouse tower?
Yeah, I definitely think he messed up on that part. One reason why he may have not reported sooner is maybe he just did not take his job too seriously. Maybe he was like, I'm just gonna go, like Monopoly, collect that money and go. And, if shit hits the fan, I'm not gonna be a part of it. I'm not gonna tell anybody. When you're out at sea too, he may have thought I'll just report later on down the line. It's not such a big deal. He didn't really have much lighthouse experience, so
pretty much it. I understand.
However, Mackenzie did say that he did see it lit one point December 12th, but then did not see it lit again until the 26th. And that was whenever Moore arrived to the lighthouse to investigate it, and he lit the lighthouse. Like we said, he did not report it to the Northern Lighthouse Board until they questioned him. He obviously failed his job. He had one job to do, and he failed. Mackenzie agreed in his contract to report of any failures to the head office in Edinburgh. This was so that they could be sure that if something happened, they would be able to send someone out right away to fix repairs ASAP. If Mackenzie reported the issue sooner, do you think that this would have changed the outcome?
Depending on exactly what happened to the lighthouse keepers, it could have very easily changed the outcome. But also, again, it couldn't have, especially if it was due to like a storm or anything like that. Obviously, they can't prevent that.
Right.
There's nothing they can do about that. But if it was due to other causes, I feel like maybe the bodies could have been found. Maybe they could have found more evidence as to what happened. Who knows? But he unfortunately waited too long.
Yeah, they would have had a better shot for at least answers.
True, but of course, Mackenzie was not a lighthouse keeper, and if he was, he would have reported it. Ducat had asked the board to try this to see how long it would take someone to notice the lighthouse signal and respond, but the experiment was not proved, which is sad for them. Because look at what happened.
Right.
They fucked up.
Yeah, Mackenzie basically got away.
Yeah, they fucked up.
So, into theories now. So, the most common plausible theory we can kind of all agree with is drowning or taken from the sea. First of all, like I mentioned before, a lighthouse keeper before had a photograph of a 300-foot wave over the Eilean Mor. So obviously there was big waves out there. With that being said, the lighthouse is only 150 feet above sea level, so if you got a 300-foot wave, clearly that's going to do a lot of damage. So what people think is the wave could have taken the tackle box off the ropes, and that two men saw this and were like, oh, we need to go and retrieve this, not thinking about the current or anything, just like, we need to do our job, so we're gonna go and get this box. During the process, sadly, they drowned, probably got caught under the current. Yeah, the first person drowned, and then they said after the first person was swept away, they ran back in to get the third man. The third man is theorized to be MacArthur, and maybe MacArthur at this point did not have his coat on, and whenever he heard this, he was like, okay, yeah, I need to save this person, not thinking how tough the current, like the rip current was or anything like that. And so he went in to jump in to save the day, but sadly all of them got swept to sea. Do you think a 300-foot wave or more was responsible for the disappearance of the 3 lighthouse keepers?
I think it's very possible, especially considering if they were only 150 feet above sea level and a 300-foot wave. They crashed into the lighthouse. It would have caused a lot of damage, and it would have swept them away into the ocean.
And do you think it is possible that they could have saw the tackle box drifting away and went in after that, and then they got caught in the current and died?
It's very possible. Very possible. But theory 2 is that they were blown away, literally. But the Butt of Lewis, which is nearby, is noted as one of the windiest places in the UK. There were no bodies washed ashore, so this is not as plausible. But still, nonetheless, it is a theory amongst all the theories we have here. Now, there is another theory that is the psychological breakdown theory. And the logs actually showed that people were not happy with the schedule that they were on, of course, with them being at sea in this lighthouse for 6 weeks and only going home for 2 weeks. Of course, you don't get to spend a lot of time with family, and you probably don't get a lot of sleep and all that stuff, so they could have easily hallucinated the storms. The keepers could have easily fought and killed others, and then committed suicide by jumping in the ocean themselves. Now, MacArthur was known to be violent, and usually when you're violent and you hallucinate, things end very badly. Could the wind have been strong enough to blow everybody? And I mean everybody. Like, these 3 grown men could have been strong enough to blow them away. Like, legit.
I mean, it is possible because if you've ever seen like a Category 5 hurricane or if you've seen like a tornado, we didn't really discuss a tornado, but there could have been like a tornado, like, and could have taken them away because there's literally tornadoes like in Twister that are blowing cows away, whole cows away.
But my second question to you is, if this was a murder instead of an accident, don't you think that the bodies would have been found or some sort of evidence to indicate would have been found, or did somebody cover it up?
It could have also been a murder as well. Like we did mention that MacArthur was known for his violence and that obviously being away from family for such a long time with not much to do except for watching out to sea, you're gonna get bored. And when people get bored, really bad things can happen. And so it is possible that one of them went crazy. When we have found the bodies, the thing is there's a whole ocean right there, so they could have easily just dumped their body into the ocean. And the ocean is so big, we only have like 3% of it discovered. Who knows where their body is?
Probably gone by now.
Now into legends. Obviously this next part is just kind of more mythological stories, but there are legends of water sprites in Scotland. These are called the Blue Men of Minch. They're mythological creatures based off of the coast of Scotland who look for sailors in stricken boats to sink or drown them. These blue men are green-haired, and they're thought to have lived in caves and sunken ships, just so it makes it easier for them to drown sailors. Legend says, if the lighthouse keepers encountered a clan of these sprites, their only hope of survival would be the last word in a rhyming dole.
The local legend surrounding, of course, was around Mor's arrival. Supposedly, when he entered the building, 3 black birds that were perched on the lighthouse flew off into the distance. People say those birds were the keepers, and that these sprites turned them into birds as a punishment because they violated the supernatural power of the island, which is crazy, of course. Local legends, of course, they do tend to be a little crazy. But there's also the last thing I want to mention as far as a theory that people think of this. Aliens. Aliens.
I mean,
do you really think some aliens would want to pick some people off a lighthouse? Well, you know what?
you
Let me take that back. They might be good for something.
Yeah, they might have been like, oh, you guys look bored. I'm just gonna pick you away.
Or they're like, delicious. Let's eat these people.
It was
Good
weird
feasting.
even from the beginning because like even with the things that happened with the sheep and the shepherds about them giving birth to twins.
For real though, it's like, strange case.
So in conclusion, the great mystery of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers remains unsolved. Please comment below what you think happened to these 3 men. We would love to know.
With that being said, remember to always keep your eyes open because you never know when a green-haired seaman is gonna drown you or when aliens are gonna come abduct you.